Hi there and welcome. You're listening to a Most Mundane Memoir with me, Jake Donnelly. In our very first chapter, I told you guys the story of the very first unfortunate question I got to ask from my very first interview of somebody from one of the four major American sports leagues. That somebody happened to be Derek Lowe, and the unfortunate question that I asked him, which you can listen to right about here, was, what the fuck? Not the best first question that somebody could ask, but Lowe handled it like an absolute professional, and so things went pretty smoothly from there, and I think it's a cool story. You guys, of course, can tell for yourselves after you listen to that. But once you do, come back here to chapter number 2, and you can listen to the story of how I almost killed a Jonas Brother in a game of softball. So let's get to it. Again, this is a story from back in grad school time for me. So I woke up one morning and I have an email in my inbox from my former baseball coach in college. As I mentioned in that first chapter, I didn't really get to play at all in college. So it's kind of weird that I was receiving this email from the coach. But I read on and he starts detailing how a former baseball player from Trinity, a guy that played like 15, 20, 25 years prior, was looking for fill-ins in a softball game, and could anybody in the Northeast and New England area help out? So I'm sitting there in Syracuse University thinking to myself, you know what? I can maybe get some bonus points with one of the alumni guys, and maybe he'll help me get a job eventually, right? Something along those lines. So I email my coach back, and he gives me detailed information on what this guy is looking for. Well, it turns out this former Trinity baseball player works for a company called Marquis Jets. Marquis Jets provided all of the air transportation for the Jonas Brothers on their world tour. Okay, so what's the connection here? Turns out the Jonas Brothers are freaks when it comes to softball. Their go-to way to unwind back in 2009 was to play softball. So they had an ongoing series against people connected to Marquis Jets. So if they're in Camden, New Jersey, they're playing representatives from Marquis Jets there. When they're in Brockton, Mass, they're playing representatives of Marquis Jets there. So this guy from Marquis Jets was furious with the fact that the Marquis Jets team was down. I think it was like 3-1 at the time, but they were down in their series against the Jonas Brothers team, which happened to be called the Road Dogs. So this guy, this former baseball player with Trinity College, was looking for ringers in order to be, and hopefully eventually, even up the series against the Jonas Brothers team. So what did he do? He emailed the head coach of Trinity College baseball that just won a national championship in 2008, and this story takes place in 2009. So he emails the coach of Trinity College, who forwards it saying, hey, anybody that wants to be a ringer in a softball game against the Jonas Brothers, please respond to this email. So I'm there, I have a rare off weekend from grad school, and I've got a little sister who is a teenager at this point. So here's a combination of things. I like stories, so I want to do something fun and play softball. It's going to be the first ever softball game in my life because I'd always played baseball prior to that. So here I am thinking I can do something cool on a softball field, and I can get myself bonus points as an older brother. This is a win-win. So I text my little sister. I say, hey, we won. It's my nickname for her. Do you want to go and watch me play softball against the Jonas Brothers? Maybe you'll get to meet them. She just replies with, sure. All right. So I go down on the appointed day, pick her up, and we drive to Brockton, Massachusetts, home of the Brockton Rox Campanelli Stadium. I get there. I'm not thinking much of it, but all of a sudden there's like a little bit of security. I thought I was just going to go and drive up and walk into the stadium. But no. There's a little bit of security because there's like 1,000 to 2,000 screaming girls all there to watch the Jonas Brothers play softball. Remember, my junior year, we had won the national championship in Appleton, Wisconsin. My senior year, we went back to the D3 World Series. And yet, through all of those games, the most intense and loudest game I have ever played in to this day that I have been a part of on the field was a softball game against the Jonas Brothers. Because what happened at the start of the game when everything was getting announced, when all the lineups were getting announced, here is Nick Jonas. Here is Joe Jonas. Like the Jonas Brothers were getting the loudest screams and cheers I have ever heard in my entire life. Okay? And at this point, I'm going, I have no idea what I have gotten myself into. But I get there, I say hi to the former Trinity College baseball player. We hit it off. We talk about how the team's doing and how the team is going to look in the future and things like that. He goes, well, you're the youngest guy here, so I'm going to bat you leadoff. All right, I still got my wheels. I can still make contact. Everything is cool. Jonas Brothers team gets announced after my entire team got announced. No one really cheered. In fact, most of the people on the Marquee Jets got booed, including yours truly. But now the time for the start of the game finally comes, right? Play ball! Coming to the plate, out of Trinity College, Jacob Donnelly. Boo! All that stuff, right? No one is there. And I mean, no one is there to see yours truly, including, by the way, my little sister. But it's softball. I want to hit a home run. That's great. But I take a look, and I look towards the right side. I'm a left-handed batter. I'm like, I'm not going to pull the ball in case I, top it. I don't want to embarrass myself and get out as the very first batter of the game, as a guy that was on a college baseball team within a year of that point, right? I can't embarrass Trinity College baseball. So I decide discretion is the better part of valor. I'm just going to hit it into the gap in left center field, go a little oppo taco, maybe get a double. Yeah. So there's one problem. One of the Jonas Brothers, the young one, the tiny one, I believe Nick, is at shortstop. And the ball is coming in, the softball pitch, the slow pitch, the underhand Henry, right? Rookie of the year. All right. But it's coming in. And I put a great swing, top it, and I hit a line drive, an absolute missile, a piss rocket laser, whatever you want to call it. I hit this thing on the ever-loving screws, directly at short. Now, I don't mean like right shoulder, left shoulder, maybe one step, two steps, left, right, forward, back. No. I hit it directly at short, as in a head-high line drive in softball field dimensions, which is a shorter, smaller field. So the reaction times have to be a little bit better. I hit this screaming line drive at the forehead of Nick Jonas, who, thankfully, because more than likely I would have died, at the last second gets his glove in the way and just knocks the ball to make sure that he didn't get concussion, didn't die, and somebody in a essentially celebrity softball game did not kill one of the Jonas Brothers who was on a world tour. I wonder what their insurance is at that point. But I get to first base, and I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, but it was at that point in my life where I understood just how furious young women, ladies, can get, especially teenagers who are there cheering on their heartthrob crushes. If you do something that might end up, let's say, killing one of them, they don't appreciate that. So I get to first base, and I've got about 1,500 12 to 25-year-old girls and women screaming at me, yelling some of the worst things you will ever hear, because, rightfully so, I almost killed a Jonas brother. And as bad as that would have been, it paled in comparison to what greeted me at first base. I get to first base, and it's their head of security, one of the biggest, whitest men I have ever had the pleasure, and it was a pleasure, of meeting in my entire life, because I get to first, and he tells me, or I should say asks me, in no uncertain or kind words, just tell me you did not mean to do that. Sir, I did not mean to do that. I was going for the gap in left center field. He goes, that's what I thought. Good. And when somebody outweighs you by like 120 pounds, the only words you want to hear from that person are good and don't let it happen again. So he said, good, don't let it happen again. Yes, sir, I will not do that. So the rest that I got out in my next at-bat because I had the fear of God put into me by the head of security from the Jonas Brothers, also by the 1,500 screaming girls. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to decide right now that I want to live after this. I want to protect my little sister because if they find out I'm the asshole that almost killed a Jonas Brother and that's my little sister, I don't think that would have gone over well. So the rest of the day didn't go that great for me, and you can see me in the thumbnails. That's me leading off, just giving my clapping. About 3 to 4 minutes before I almost killed a Jonas Brother and then almost got lynched by 1,500 screaming girls. I want to just point out, by the way, all three of the Jonas Brothers, and I think it was their fiancés at the time, significant others, whatever, but those guys are some of the most real, kind, generous dudes you will ever meet. They spent a bunch of time after the game saying hi to the fans that made their way there. They were really cool to my little sister, and after my little sister talked for a couple of minutes with all three of the Jonas Brothers, she goes and tells me, oh, by the way, you do know that I don't really like the Jonas Brothers, right? So all of this, unless you like good stories, was for naught. I took my little sister, who I thought because she was a teenager, I thought that she would obviously be head over heels to meet the Jonas Brothers. Wasn't really the case though, because turns out, not a fan of the Jonas Brothers, but because she's an evil human being like yours truly, thought it was really funny that I almost got lynched by roughly 1,500 screaming girls in Brockton, Massachusetts for almost killing a Jonas Brother at a softball game. So, yeah, that is chapter 2 of A Most Mundane Memoir with me, Jake Donnelly, and in chapter 3, we're going to have to, to be blunt, we're going to have to pump myself up and tell a story from something good I once did on an athletic field. Although, quite frankly, if you're listening to this and you don't have the best opinion of the Jonas Brothers, you may say that I already did something good. But chapter 3 will tell you something from my actual career in bullpen catching, and we'll go with that. But in order to listen to that, you'll have to tune in for chapter number 3 of A Most Mundane Memoir with me, Jake Donnelly. Until then, have a good one.